The big room was quiet, very quiet. All the young soldiers from different planets sat in their chairs. They looked scared. Their eyes were wide. Some were shaking. Admiral Kethfer stood at the front. He was tall and had green skin like a lizard. His yellow eyes looked at each student. He did not smile. He never smiled. "Today you will take the hardest test," he said. His voice was deep and scary. "We call it the nightmare scenario. It has been used for 300 years. Jake Harrison sat in the back row. He was the only human in the room. He had short brown hair and blue eyes. He wore the same gray uniform as everyone else. But he looked different. He looked calm. The other students came from many worlds. There was Veltar, who had 6 arms. His blue skin was getting darker. That meant he was worried. There was Zixtal, made of crystal. Light moved through his clear body. He was making small cracking sounds. That was bad. "The test is simple," Admiral Kethfer said. "You must command a space fleet. You will fight a much bigger enemy. You have few ships. They have many. You have old weapons. They have new ones. You have little time. They have all the time they need." A student with 4 legs raised one hand. "How many passed this test?" The Admiral's throat got bigger. That was how his people showed they were serious. 2 out of every 100, that is all. Only 17 beings have passed in 300 years. The room got even quieter. Some students made worried sounds. Others started to breathe fast. One small alien student began to cry. Jake raised his hand. His face was calm. He was almost smiling. "Yes, human Jake?" the Admiral asked. "Sir, what happened to the other 98 students?" Everyone turned to look at Jake. The Admiral's yellow eyes got narrow. They failed. They all failed badly. Jake's smile got bigger. "So there is room to do better." The Admiral stared at Jake for a long time. Other students looked confused. How could the human be happy about this? The test was impossible. Almost everyone failed. Why was he smiling? "You think this is funny, human Jake?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir," Jake said. "I think it is interesting. If only 2 out of 100 pass, that means 98 are doing something wrong. Maybe they need to try something different." An alien student with tentacles for arms spoke up. "But the test is designed to be impossible. The smartest beings in the galaxy have failed it." Jake looked at the tentacled student. "Maybe being smart is not enough. Maybe you need something else. What else could there be?" Asked Veltar with his 6 arms. Jake shrugged. "I guess we will find out." Admiral Kethfer explained the test rules. Each student would go into a special room. They would sit in a chair that connected to their brain. The chair would make them feel like they were really commanding a space fleet. Everything would feel real. The ships, the weapons, the enemy. All of it would seem like it was really happening. "You will have 1 week to prepare," the Admiral said. "Study the enemy, learn their ships, practice with the weapons. Most students spend every hour of every day getting ready." The students began to leave. They talked quietly to each other. They were already making plans. Some would go to the library. Others would use the training computers. A few would ask teachers for help. Jake stood up slowly. Lisa Parker walked over to him. She was another human at the academy. She had long, red hair and green eyes. She was smart and always worried about tests. "Jake, are you crazy?" she asked. "This test kills careers. Students who fail badly never get good jobs. Some never get any job at all." Jake picked up his books. "Lisa, do you know what my grandfather used to say?" "What?" "He said that impossible just means nobody has figured out how to do it yet." Lisa shook her head. "This is not a joke, Jake. The test is really hard. The enemy has 10 times more ships. Their weapons are much better. The computer that controls them is super smart. It knows every trick that has ever been tried. Jake started, walking toward the door. Then maybe it is time to try something that has never been tried before. Like what? Jake stopped and looked at her. His blue eyes were bright. I have no idea, but I have a whole week to think about it. Lisa watched him leave. She was worried about her friend. Jake was always like this. He never seemed scared of anything, even when they were in basic training. And everyone else was tired and wanted to quit. Jake kept going. He always found a way to make hard things seem easy. But this was different. This was not basic training. This was the test that broke the best students in the galaxy. Smart aliens who had studied war for their whole lives failed this test. How could one human do better? That night, Jake did not go to the library. He did not use the training computers. He did not ask teachers for help. Instead, he went to the gym. He ran on the machine for an hour. Then he lifted weights. Then he did push-ups and sit-ups. Other students saw him there. They whispered to each other. The human has given up, they said. He knows he cannot win, so he is not even trying. But Jake was not giving up. He was thinking. And while he thought, he exercised. His body moved, but his mind was working on the problem. How do you beat an enemy that is bigger, stronger, and smarter than you? The answer would come to him soon. And when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The test day came too fast. Jake had spent the week doing strange things. While other students read books about war, Jake read books about Earth history. While others practiced with weapon systems, Jake played old Earth games. While others met. With study groups, Jake sat alone and hummed songs. Lisa found him the morning of the test. He was in the cafeteria, eating breakfast. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed. Jake, the test starts in 2 hours, she said. Are you ready? Jake looked up from his eggs. As ready as I can be. Did you study the enemy ship designs? A little. Did you practice with the fleet command systems? Some. Lisa sat down across from him. Jake, what have you been doing all week? Jake smiled. Learning how humans fight wars. What do you mean? I read about old Earth battles. I looked at how humans won when they should have lost. Do you know what I found? Lisa shook her head. Humans do not fight fair. When the enemy expects us to do one thing, we do something else. When they think we will be careful, we take big risks. When they think we will follow the rules, we make new rules. But this is not a real war, Jake. This is a test. There are rules you have to follow. Jake finished his eggs. Are there? Or are there just rules that everyone thinks they have to follow? Before Lisa could answer, the speakers in the cafeteria made a loud sound. All students taking the Nightmare Scenario test report to Testing Center Alpha immediately. Jake stood up. Time to go. The testing center was a large white room with 20 chairs in it. Each chair had wires and screens around it. The chairs looked like something from a scary movie. Students sat in them one by one. Their eyes closed. Their bodies went still. Inside their minds, they were fighting the impossible war. Most students lasted less than an hour. They would sit still, then suddenly start moving fast. Their faces would show fear, then anger, then sadness. Then they would go still again, and the test would be over. They had lost. Jake was the last student to sit in a chair. Admiral Kethfer stood next to him. Are you ready, human Jake? The Admiral asked. Yes, sir. Remember, this is not real, but it will feel real. Your mind will think you are really in space, commanding real ships. Real people will seem to die. Do you understand? Jake nodded. I understand. The Admiral put a metal circle on Jake's head. Wires connected it to the big computer. Begin test, he said. Jake's world changed. 1 second, he was in the White Room. The next second, he was standing on the command deck of a spaceship. Stars filled the windows. His ship was moving through a colorful cloud of gas and dust called the Kepler Nebula. "Sir, enemy ships detected," said his first officer. "She was not real, but she seemed real. They have us surrounded." Jake looked at the main screen. Red dots showed enemy ships. There were so many of them. His fleet had 20 ships. The enemy had over 200. His ships were old and slow. The enemy ships were new and fast. "Options?" Jake asked. "We could try to run away," said his weapons officer. "Or we could find a place to hide and fight them off." Jake looked at the screen again. Every military book he had not read said the same thing. When you are outnumbered, you retreat. When you are outgunned, you find cover. When you are outmatched, you play defense. "No," Jake said. "We attack." "Sir?" His first officer looked confused. "All ships, full speed ahead. Target there. Biggest ship. We are going straight at them." In the testing center, Admiral Cadet watched the screens that showed what Jake was doing. The Admiral's throat sacs got bigger. The human was doing something no student had ever done. He was attacking when he should be running away. "The human has lost his mind," whispered Commander Zixtel. "He was made of crystal and taught battle tactics. He is throwing away his ships like they are toys." Other teachers gathered around to watch. They had seen thousands of students take this test. Most tried to be careful. They saved their ships. They planned each move. They tried to be smart. Jake was not being careful. He was not saving his ships. He was not planning ahead. He was doing something that looked completely crazy. His biggest ship flew straight at the enemy fleet. Enemy weapons fired at it. Green laser beams hit its shields. The shields got weaker. Then they broke. The ship took damage. It was hurt bad. But Jake did not stop. He flew his damaged ship right into the middle of the enemy fleet. His other ships followed him. They were taking damage too. Ships were exploding. People were dying. "This is madness," said Veltar, the 6-armed alien. "The human is killing everyone." But Admiral Cadet was watching more carefully. The human was not just attacking randomly. Each move looked crazy, but it had a purpose. While the enemy was focused on his big attack, Jake was doing something else. His small ships were spreading out through the nebula. They were not fighting. They were going to different places and doing something to the space rocks floating there. They were putting bombs on them. Lots of bombs. "Clever," the Admiral said quietly. Jake's attack was not meant to destroy the enemy. It was meant to make them look the wrong way. While they were busy fighting his big ships, his small ships were getting ready to do something much more dangerous. Back in the simulation, Jake's fleet was losing badly. Half his ships were destroyed. The other half were damaged. His enemies were barely hurt. "Sir, we cannot keep this up," said his first officer. "We are losing too many ships." Jake looked at the battle display. His plan was working, but it would take time. He needed to keep the enemy busy a little longer. "All damaged ships set course for the nearest enemy group," he said. "Full speed." "Sir, if we do that, we will crash into them." Jake smiled. "I know." The watching teachers could not believe what they were seeing. The human was using his damaged ships as weapons. Instead of trying to fix them or retreat, he was flying them straight at the enemy ships. When they hit, both ships exploded. "He is using his own ships as bombs," Commander Zixtal said. His crystal body was cracking with stress. This is not how space battles are fought, but it was working. The enemy computer was getting confused. It was programmed to fight smart, careful opponents. It did not know what to do with an opponent who seemed to have no care for his own losses. Jake watched his fleet get smaller and smaller. Soon he would have no ships left. But that was okay. He did not need ships to win this battle. He needed something else. "Sir, the enemy is moving into attack formation," his first officer reported. "They are preparing to finish us off." Jake looked at the screen. The enemy ships were moving into a tight group. They were exactly where he wanted them to be. All ships. "Get ready to run away," he said, "but not yet. Wait for my signal." The enemy ships got closer. Their weapons were charging up. In a few seconds, they would fire and destroy what was left of Jake's fleet. Jake waited. His heart was beating fast. But his face was calm. Everything depended on perfect timing. Now! He shouted. His remaining ships suddenly changed direction. They flew away from the enemy as fast as they could. At the same time, all the bombs his small ships had placed on the space rocks exploded at once. The Kepler Nebula lit up like a star. The explosions were bigger than anyone expected. The space rocks Jake had mined were not normal rocks. They were made of special materials that burned very hot and very bright. When they exploded, they created a chain reaction that spread through. The whole nebula. Light filled the space around the enemy fleet. Their sensors could not see through the bright explosions. Their computers could not tell where Jake's ships were. For a few minutes, the enemy fleet was blind. Jake used those minutes well. His remaining ships spread out and attacked from different directions. They hit the confused enemy ships hard. Many enemy ships exploded before they could figure out what was happening. But the enemy was not stupid. Their computer brain was very smart. It quickly figured out what Jake had done. It moved the remaining enemy ships away from the explosions. It called for more ships to come help. "Sir, enemy reinforcements are coming," Jake's first officer said. 3 more fleets are jumping in. Each one is bigger than the first." Jake looked at the display. Now he was not just outnumbered 10-1. He was outnumbered 50-1. Any normal commander would surrender. Any smart commander would try to escape. Jake started laughing. "Sir?" His first officer looked worried. "Are you okay?" "I am perfect," Jake said. "This is exactly what I wanted." In the testing center, Admiral Kethver was leaning forward in his chair. He had been watching students take this test for many years. He had never seen anything like what the human was doing. "The test computer is using its highest difficulty setting," Commander Zixtal said. His crystal body was making worried sounds. "It is throwing everything it has at the human." "Yes," Admiral Kethver said. "And the human seems happy about it." The other teachers were confused. How could anyone be happy about facing impossible odds? The enemy now had hundreds of ships. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had shields that could stop anything. Jake had 12 ships left. Most of them were damaged. His weapons were almost out of power. His shields were barely working. "Sir, we should retreat," his weapons officer said. "We cannot win this fight." "We are not trying to win a fight," Jake said. "We are trying to win a war. There is a difference." Jake looked at his battle display. The enemy ships were moving into perfect formation. They were spread out to cover all escape routes. They were coordinated and disciplined. They were doing exactly what their training told them to do. That was their mistake. "All ships, emergency broadcast on all frequencies," Jake ordered. "Sir, what should we broadcast?" His communications officer asked. Jake smiled. "Everything. Broadcast our sensor readings. Broadcast our weapon signatures. Broadcast our engine sounds. And broadcast some music from Earth." "Music, sir?" "The loudest, most annoying music we have. I want every enemy ship to hear it." The communications officer looked confused, but followed orders. Suddenly, every radio frequency in the area was filled with noise. Military signals mixed with sensor data, mixed with something called heavy metal music from Earth. The enemy computer had been designed to listen to enemy communications. It tried to process all the signals at once. It tried to find patterns and decode messages. But there were too many signals, and most of them made no sense. "Sir, the enemy fleet is slowing down," his first officer reported. "Their formation is getting sloppy." Jake nodded. "They are trying to figure out what we are doing. Let us give them something else to think about." Jake ordered his ships to do something that no military manual had ever suggested. He had them fly in random directions, not strategic movements, not tactical maneuvers, just random, crazy flying that made no sense. One ship flew straight up, another flew in circles. A third ship flew backward while spinning. It looked like his fleet had gone insane. The enemy computer tried to predict what Jake would do next. But you cannot predict random behavior. The computer started making mistakes. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. "Sir, 2 enemy ships just crashed into each other," his weapons officer reported. "They were trying to intercept our spinning." Ship and got confused. Jake laughed again. "Confusion is our best weapon. Keep being confusing." His ships continued their chaotic dance. They flew in patterns that hurt to look at. They broadcast random signals. They fired their weapons at empty space. They acted like they were completely out of control. But Jake was in control. Everything that looked random was actually carefully planned. He was creating so much confusion that the enemy could not think straight. "Sir, more enemy ships are arriving," his first officer said. "But they are not joining the battle. They are just sitting there." Jake looked at the display. The new enemy ships were keeping their distance. They were trying to figure out what was happening before they got involved. "They are scared," Jake said. "They do not understand what we are doing, so they are being careful. But, sir, we are still outnumbered 100 to 1. Jake shrugged. Numbers do not matter if the other side is too confused to use them. His strategy was working, but it could not work forever. Soon the enemy would figure out what he was doing. They would adapt. They would find a way to deal with his chaos. Jake needed to do something bigger, something that would end the battle before the enemy could recover. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up something big," his sensor officer said. "It is coming out of hyperspace." Jake looked at the sensor reading. His face went pale. Even he had not expected this. "What is it, sir?" His first officer asked. Jake stared at the screen. "That is the Star Killer, the most powerful weapon in the galaxy." The Star Killer was a ship the size of a small moon. It had weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. It had shields that could stop any attack. It had never been defeated. The test computer was bringing in its final challenge. The impossible enemy that no student had ever beaten. Most students who reached this point gave up. They knew they could not win. They tried to survive as long as possible, but they always lost in the end. Jake looked at the massive ship on his screen. It was black and covered with weapons. It looked like death itself. "Sir, what are your orders?" His first officer asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. And his smile came back. "Signal all ships," he said. "We are going fishing." "Fishing, sir?" "We are going to catch ourselves a Star Killer." In the testing center, Admiral Cathfer stood up. In all his years of watching this test, no student had ever tried to attack the Star Killer. It was supposed to be impossible. "The human has finally lost his mind," Commander Zixtel said. "No one can defeat the Star Killer." Admiral Cathfer looked at the screen showing Jake's vital signs. The human's heart was beating fast, but his brain patterns showed he was thinking clearly. He was not crazy. He was planning something. "What are you up to, human Jake?" The Admiral whispered. Jake was about to show them. And when he did, it would change everything. The Star Killer moved through space like a giant black mountain. Its weapons were bigger than most ships. Its shields glowed with power that could stop anything. When it moved, space itself seemed to bend around it. Jake's remaining ships looked like tiny bugs next to it. He had 8 ships left. Most of them were barely working. Their weapons were weak. Their shields were broken. Any sane person would run away. Jake flew straight toward it. "Sir, the Star Killer is charging its main weapon," his weapons officer said. His voice was shaking. "It can destroy our entire fleet with one shot." "Good," Jake said. "Let it charge." "Sir?" His first officer looked confused. "Should we not try to stop it?" "No. I want it to use its biggest weapon. I want it to use all its power." The other officers on Jake's bridge looked at each other. They thought their captain had gone crazy. How could anyone want the enemy to use their strongest weapon? Jake was reading his sensors carefully. The Star Killer was not just a weapon. It was also a tool. To destroy stars, it had to create artificial black holes. To do that, it needed huge gravity generators. "Sir, I am reading massive gravitational distortions." His science officer reported. "The Star Killer is bending space around itself." Jake smiled. "Perfect. All ships, prepare for emergency acceleration. We are going to use that gravity." "Use it how, sir?" "Ever heard of a slingshot?" Jake asked Dot in the testing center, Admiral. Kethvar was watching the displays with growing amazement. The human was not trying to fight the Star Killer. He was trying to use it. "Impossible," Commander Zixtel said. "The gravitational forces would tear his ships apart." "The human knows." "That," Admiral Kethvar said, "but he is going to try anyway." Jake's plan was simple in theory, but nearly impossible to execute. He wanted to use the Star Killer's own gravity generators to accelerate his ships to incredible speeds. Like a rock thrown from a slingshot, his ships would gain power from the enemy's own weapon, but the timing had to be perfect. Too early, and his ships would be crushed by the gravity. Too late, and they would be destroyed by the Star Killer's weapons. "Sir, the Star Killer is almost ready to fire," his weapons officer said. 30 seconds until it shoots." Jake watched his instruments. The gravity readings were climbing. Space was getting twisted into impossible shapes. His ships were starting to shake from the force. "Sir, hull stress is approaching critical levels," his engineering officer reported. "We need to move away, or we will be destroyed." "Hold position," Jake said calmly. "Wait for my signal." The Star Killer's weapon was almost ready. Energy was building up inside the massive ship. Soon it would fire and destroy everything in its path. Jake's ships were getting pulled toward the Star Killer by its gravity. They were moving faster and faster. The metal hulls were bending and cracking. Warning lights were flashing everywhere. "Sir, we cannot take much more of this," his first officer said. "We need to leave now." "Not yet," Jake said. "Almost there." The Star Killer's weapon reached full power. It was ready to fire. Jake's ships were seconds away from being crushed by the gravity or destroyed by the weapon. "Now," Jake shouted. "All ships, full power. Ride the wave." Jake's ships fired their engines at the exact moment the Star Killer fired its weapon. The combination of engine power and gravitational force shot Jake's ships forward like bullets from a gun. They moved so fast. That time seemed to slow down. The Star Killer's weapon beam passed behind them, missing by inches. The gravity that should have crushed them instead pushed them to impossible speeds. Jake's ships flew past the Star Killer before it could react. They were moving too fast for its weapons to track. They were like tiny rockets powered by the enemy's own strength. "Sir, we are moving at 90% of light speed," his navigation officer reported. "I have never seen anything like this." Jake looked at his tactical display. His ships were now behind the Star Killer, moving in a huge circle around it. The massive enemy ship was turning to face them, but it was too slow. "All ships, prepare for attack run," Jake ordered. "Target the gravity generators." "Sir, our weapons are not powerful enough to hurt the Star Killer," his weapons officer said. "They do not need to be powerful," Jake said. "They just need to be precise." Jake had studied the Star Killer's design during his chaotic flight. He had found something the test designers probably did not expect anyone to notice. The gravity generators were connected to each other. If one failed, the others would overload trying to compensate. "Target the smallest generator," Jake ordered. "The one on the bottom left. Hit it with everything we have." Jake's 8 ships fired all their weapons at once. Laser beams and missiles flew toward the Star Killer. The weapons were weak, but they were all aimed at the same small target. Star Killer's shields easily stopped most of the attack, but a few shots got through. They hit the gravity generator and caused small damage. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to make it work incorrectly. "Sir, the Star Killer's gravity field is becoming unstable," his science officer reported. "The other generators are trying to compensate." Jake watched his sensors. The Star Killer was in trouble. Its own gravity was becoming uncontrolled. The artificial black holes it used as weapons were starting to affect each other. "Sir, the Star Killer is caught in its own gravity field," his first officer said. "It cannot move." Jake nodded. "Now we wait." The Star Killer tried to shut down its gravity generators, but it was too late. The artificial black holes were feeding on each other, growing bigger and stronger. The massive ship was being pulled apart by its own weapons. "Sir, the Star Killer is breaking up," his weapons officer reported. "Its hull is cracking." Jake watched the enemy ship tear itself apart. It had been designed to be unbeatable. Its weapons could destroy anything. Its shields could stop any attack. But it could not defend against its own power turned against it. The Star Killer exploded in a flash of light that lit up the entire nebula. When the light faded, there was nothing left but space dust and memories. Jake's ship slowed down and regrouped. They were still damaged. They were still outnumbered by the remaining enemy fleet. But they had done something impossible. They had defeated the Star Killer. "Sir, the enemy fleet is retreating," his communications officer reported. "They are requesting permission to surrender." Jake looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships were pulling back. Without their ultimate weapon, they did not want to fight anymore. "Accept their surrender," Jake said. "The battle is over." In the testing center, the room was completely quiet. Admiral Kethvar and all the other teachers stared at the displays. They could not believe what they had just seen. "The human won," Commander Zixtal said. His crystal body was making amazed sounds. He actually won. Admiral Kethvar looked at Jake's readings. The human's heart rate was returning to normal. His brain patterns showed he was calm and relaxed. He had just done the impossible, and he acted like it was no big deal. How did he do it? Another teacher asked. Admiral Kethvar thought about it. He did not fight the test. He used the test against itself. He turned every disadvantage into an advantage. He made the enemy's strengths into weaknesses. But how did he know it would work? Admiral Kethvar looked at Jake's still form in the testing chair. I do not think he knew. I think he hoped. And sometimes hope is stronger than knowledge. The test was over. Jake had won. He had beaten the impossible scenario that had defeated thousands of students before him. He had proven that humans could do things that no one else could do. But the real test was just beginning. Now everyone would want to know how he did it. They would want to study his methods. They would want to learn his secrets. Jake would have to teach them something that could not be learned from books or computers. He would have to teach them how to be human. Jake opened his eyes. He was back in the white testing room. The metal circle was still on his head, but the wires were not glowing anymore. The test was over. Admiral Cadet stood next to his chair. The lizard-like alien was staring at Jake with his yellow eyes. His throat sacs were bigger than Jake had ever seen them. "How do you feel, human Jake?" the Admiral asked. Jake sat up slowly. His head felt strange, like he was waking up from a very long dream. "I feel good, sir. Tired, but good." "Do you know what you just did?" Jake looked around the room. The other testing chairs were empty. The other students were gone. He had been the last one to take the test. "I passed the test?" Jake asked. Admiral. Cadet made a sound that might have been laughter. "You did more than pass, human Jake. You destroyed the test. You did something that the computer said was impossible." Other teachers were gathering around Jake's chair. They all looked amazed. Some looked scared. They were whispering to each other in their alien languages. "Sir, what happens now?" Jake asked. "Now you answer questions," Admiral Cadet said. "Many questions. Every military leader in the galaxy will want to know how you did what you did." Lisa Parker was waiting for Jake outside the testing center. She ran to him when she saw him come out. "Jake, I heard you won. Is it true?" Jake smiled. "It is true. I passed the test." Lisa hugged him. "I cannot believe it. Nobody passes that test. How did you do it?" "I did not fight the test," Jake said. "I used the test." "What does that mean?" Jake looked up at the stars through the Academy's big windows. "It means I stopped trying to do what everyone else had tried. I started doing what felt right to me." Over the next few days, Jake became famous. Students from all over the galaxy came to see him. Teachers asked him to explain his methods. Military officers wanted to study his techniques, but Jake's answers always disappointed them. They wanted complex theories and advanced strategies. Jake gave them simple explanations. "How did you know the Star Killer's gravity generators would overload?" asked a professor from the War College. "I did not know," Jake said. "I guessed. It seemed like the kind of thing that might work." "But what if you had been wrong?" Jake shrugged. "Then I would have lost. But I was not wrong." The professors and military experts tried to understand Jake's methods. They made charts and diagrams. They wrote long reports. They created new training programs based on what Jake had done. But they missed the most important part. They focused on what Jake had done, not on how he had thought about it. Jake had not won because he was smarter than everyone else. He had won because he thought differently. While others saw problems, Jake saw opportunities. While others saw rules, Jake saw suggestions. While others saw impossible odds, Jake saw interesting challenges. The human factor, Admiral Cadet called it in his report. Humans approach impossible situations with a combination of optimism, creativity, and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. 2 weeks after the test, Jake was called to Admiral Cathvar's office. The Admiral was sitting behind his big desk, looking at reports on his computer. "Sit down, human Jake," the Admiral said. Jake sat in the chair across from the desk. "Am I in trouble, sir?" "No, you are not in trouble. You are being promoted and transferred." "Where am I going, sir?" Admiral Cadet leaned back in his chair. "You are going to Earth. Your military wants to study what you did. They want to understand how humans think about war." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "What is it?" "Why did you make the test so hard? Why did you make it so that almost everyone fails?" Admiral Cathvar's throat sacs got bigger. "Because war is hard, human Jake. Real war is harder than any test. We wanted to find beings who could handle the impossible. For 300 years, we found very few. And now? Now we know that humans think about impossible differently than everyone else. Most species see impossible and give up. Humans see impossible and get curious." Jake smiled. "My grandfather always said that impossible just means nobody has figured out how to do it yet. Your grandfather was a smart human, Admiral Kethfer said. I would like to meet him someday. You cannot, sir. He died when I was young. But he taught me something important before he died. What did he teach you? Jake looked out the window at the training fields where new students were practicing. He taught me that the best way to solve a problem is to change the problem. Admiral Kethfer thought about this. Is that what you did in the test? You changed the problem? Yes, sir. Everyone else was trying to win a space battle. I was trying to win a war. Those are two different things. The Admiral nodded slowly. And how does one win a war? Human Jake. Jake stood up to leave. You make the enemy defeat themselves, sir. You find their strength and turn it into their weakness. You make them so. Confused, they forget why they are fighting. After Jake left, Admiral Kethfer sat alone in his office for a long time. He was thinking about humans and how they approached problems. He was thinking about Jake's test and what it meant for the future. The next day, Admiral Kethfer made some changes to the academy. He created a new class called Human Military History. He invited human teachers to come and explain how Earth armies had won impossible battles. He also changed the nightmare scenario test. He did not make it easier, but he made it different. Now it tested not just tactical knowledge, but also creativity and the ability to think in new ways. Jake's last day at the academy was busy. Students and teachers came to say goodbye. Many of them gave him gifts from their home worlds. Lisa Parker gave him a photo of their class. I will miss you, she said. It was interesting being friends with someone who made impossible things look easy. Jake looked at the photo. All the different alien students were standing together, smiling in their own ways. It was not easy, Lisa. It just looked easy because I was not trying to do it the hard way. What do you mean? Everyone else was trying to beat the test by being better than it. I beat it by being different from it. That evening, Jake packed his few belongings. Tomorrow, he would take a ship back to Earth. He would work with human military leaders to develop new training methods. He would help them understand what he had learned at the academy. But first, he had one more thing to do. He went to the academy's memorial wall, where the names of students who had died in real wars were written. He found his grandfather's name near the bottom. Thank you, Grandpa, Jake said quietly. Your advice worked. Jake's transport ship left. The next morning, as it flew away from the academy, Jake looked back at the buildings where he had learned so much. He thought about the test that had made him famous and the friends he was leaving behind. But mostly, he thought about the future. The galaxy was full of problems that seemed impossible to solve. There were wars that could not be won, enemies that could not be defeated, challenges that could not be overcome. At least, that was what everyone thought. Jake smiled as his ship jumped to hyperspace. He was looking forward to showing them that impossible was just another word for interesting. Back at the academy, Admiral Kethfer was reading reports about Jake's test. Military leaders from a dozen worlds wanted copies of the data. They wanted to understand how one human had done what thousands of others could not. Admiral Kethfer had sent them all the same reply. If you want to understand humans, do not study their methods. Study their attitude. They do not see problems the same way we do. They see opportunities. The Admiral looked up at the stars through his office window. Somewhere out there, Jake Harrison was traveling back to Earth. Soon, other humans would learn what Jake had discovered. They would learn new ways to think about old problems. Admiral Kethfer's throat sacs inflated with what his species considered thoughtful concern. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. And it was all because one human cadet had smiled at impossible odds and asked about the other 98%. The universe, it seemed, was not ready for human optimism, but it was about to learn. Admiral Cathvar made a note in his personal files. Recommend expanded human exchange program. Also recommend psychological preparation for faculty. Human thinking patterns may cause confusion among traditional military theorists. Then he added one more line. Note to self, never tell a human that something cannot be done. They take it as a personal challenge. Outside his window, new students were arriving for the next term. Among them were 3 more humans, all smiling. With the same confident expression Jake had worn, Admiral Kethver sighed. It was going to be an interesting year,